This is the border between North and South Korea, known as the DMZ, which stands for Demilitarized Zone. Neither of the two Koreas is allowed to bring weapons into this area. If they have any disputes, they must resolve them through physical altercations rather than gunfire. Such clashes have occurred multiple times. However, on August 19, 1976, a confrontation took place here that has been recorded in history, a conflict that could have triggered World War III. Within the DMZ, there is a neutral zone where the main border passes right through the middle. This area belongs to neither North Korea nor South Korea, which is why it's referred to as the Joint Security Area, JSA. You might recall that Donald Trump also entered North Korea through this very border. In this neutral security zone, North and South Korean guards are often in direct view of one another and at times even pass by each other up close. This was especially common in the 1970s when tensions were running high in the area. So what was this particular confrontation we're going to talk about? It all started with a tree located in the Joint Security Area, meaning it belonged to neither North Korea nor South Korea. The tree had grown so large that it obstructed the view of the South Korean guards, making it difficult for them to monitor the border properly. To solve this, they decided to cut the tree down. To avoid any direct confrontation, South Korea didn't send its own personnel to remove the tree. Instead, they contacted the United Nations and requested that their personnel handle the tree cutting in the Joint Security Area. A group of UN officials arrived, picked up a few axes, and headed toward the tree. You might wonder, why didn't they use a chainsaw? We don't know, maybe it was because of the noise. They approached the tree and began chopping it with their axes. Suddenly, North Korean guards swarmed around the tree, demanding, "What are you doing? Who gave you permission to do this?" The UN personnel replied, "We are with the United Nations." The North Korean guard shot back, "We don't care who you are with, get lost." Sensing the situation was escalating, the UN officials quickly realized things were getting out of hand and decided to retreat. The South Korean officials asked them what happened. The UN personnel replied, "They're angry. These North Koreans could suddenly attack and kill us." The South Koreans said, "Alright, head back for now, come back in 2 weeks. We'll send you with 4 guards to finish cutting down the tree." We arrive at August 19th. 2 weeks later, 4 South Korean guards had already positioned themselves around the tree in advance. Then the UN personnel arrived with their axes and began chopping the tree once again. From a distance, the North Korean guards watched them and said, "What are they doing? Why won't they leave this tree alone?" A few North Korean guards moved closer and started shouting in Korean, "Stop, step back." However, the UN personnel and South Korean soldiers completely ignored them and continued their work. Frustrated, the North Korean guards returned to their post. It wasn't long before a truck arrived, packed with additional North Korean troops. They quickly disembarked, all armed with batons. As mentioned earlier, in this neutral zone, no one is allowed to carry firearms, but batons are permitted. The UN personnel and South Korean soldiers see 20 North Korean guards, all holding batons, coming toward them. For a moment, they're taken aback thinking, "Oh no, it looks like they're about to start a fight," but then they continue their work nonetheless. However, the North Korean commander, seeing that they aren't stopping, orders his baton-wielding troops to attack. Realizing they're about to be attacked, the South Koreans and UN personnel quickly drop their axes and start running towards South Korea to escape the imminent beating. However, 2 of them are caught and the North Korean guards start beating them with their batons. Both of them were from the United Nations. They are severely beaten, and then the North Korean guards notice the 2 axes lying on the ground. They pick up the axes and use them to strike the UN personnel, killing both of them. You might think that this was just a fight between the 2 Koreas, no big deal, but you need to understand that this was not just a small conflict. It was between 2 superpowers during the Cold War. This very skirmish had the potential to ignite World War III. When the North Korean guards returned to their post and reported this incident, their higher-ups were shocked. They reported it to their superior, and from above, the order came down. Declare that this tree is sacred to us because it was planned by Kim Il-sung, the first leader of North Korea, many years ago. Now, in order to cover up their wrongdoing, they fabricated a story to justify their actions. The situation escalates even further when it's discovered that the 2 UN personnel who were killed were American. You need to understand understand that after the Korean War, the South Korean military operated under the supervision of the United States, and the US had more than 50 military bases in the region. Because of this, American forces quickly gathered at the border. However, the orders from above were clear: do not escalate the tension. We are not fighting with North Korea. We are facing the Soviet Union. The American military commander said that the tree had to be removed at all costs, but they must avoid starting a war, so they planned to come back 2 days later at a specific time to cut down the tree. However, this time it wouldn't just be 4 guards with axes. Instead, they brought in the military, both on the ground and in the air, equipped with chainsaws to quickly bring the tree down. The Americans had already deployed their helicopters and military aircraft along the border, instructing them to fly at low altitudes to create as much noise as possible. The goal was to draw out the North Korean guards so they would come out and see what was happening. After the low-flying aircraft passed, 2 South Korean military trucks and 1 American military truck arrived at the tree. 60 South Korean soldiers disembarked from the trucks, and this time they weren't carrying batons. Each of them had an M16 rifle in hand, meaning they were armed with firearms. In the American truck there were 16 armed soldiers, 3 of whom brought chainsaws and began heading toward the tree to cut it down. Meanwhile, the helicopters and planes continued flying overhead, adding to the noise. The North Korean soldiers stood by, watching and waiting for orders on what to do next. The Americans had instructed that only the branches and leaves should be cut off, and the trunk should be left standing. What were they thinking? We don't know. North Korea showed no reaction. The Americans had reached their breaking point. They had already sent the aircraft carrier USS Midway into South Korean waters, and all American bases in South Korea had been put on high alert. They were instructed that if North Korea attacked, they would retaliate. However, neither the Soviet Union nor the United States wanted such a war to break out. As a result, they both backed down. The tree was eventually removed and the situation de-escalated. However, they decided to leave the trunk standing, perhaps because of its historical significance or as a memento, since 2 lives had been lost by the tree. Interestingly, after the incident was over, Kim Il-sung, the leader of North Korea, apologized to the United States and South Korea, saying, "We're sorry for killing those 2 personnel." Of course, the news of the apology and reconciliation spread all over the world except for North Korea. The people of North Korea were unaware that their leader had apologized, because to them, their leader is like a god and cannot make mistakes, and of course, he doesn't make mistakes. Years went by and the tree trunk that remained began to dry out and rot. It had to be removed, so the South Koreans came and took out the tree trunk, placing a commemorative plaque in its place. North Korea just watched and didn't say anything. In history, this event was considered extremely dangerous and it was documented as such. It was highly likely that World War III could have started all because of a tree. Do you think this conflict could have led to the start of World War III? Please leave your comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel.